When 6,000 trucks lit up their headlights, the German army's nightmare begins. August 19, 1944. Wehrmacht headquarters, East Prussia. General Alfred Jodl studied fresh intelligence from the collapsing Western Front. His staff had calculated Allied supply lines stretching over 400 miles from Normandy beaches to Patton's Third Army spearhead. The Americans had outrun their logistics. Patton would halt within days, perhaps hours. No army could maintain such momentum without fuel. From Hitler's Wolf's Lair, Jodl knew the numbers. An armored division consumed 150,000 gallons daily when advancing. The Americans sat 400 miles from their depots. The conclusion was unavoidable. Patton's Third Army would stall, granting the Wehrmacht time to regroup at the Seine, possibly until winter. What Jodl didn't know was that 125 miles away, 5,958 trucks already formed an endless eastbound convoy, headlights blazing against military doctrine, transporting 12,500 tons of supplies every 24 hours. The Red Ball Express, a logistics operation so bold that German military science deemed it inconceivable, was poised to shatter every assumption about mechanized warfare. Within 72 hours, Patton's immobilized tanks would smash through German positions at the Seine. Within a week, they would liberate Paris. Within a month, they would reach the German border. The Wehrmacht's finest minds were about to learn a brutal lesson in American logistics, delivered by 23,000 truck drivers, 75% African American, who transformed a one-way highway into history's most efficient military supply line. German confidence in American logistical failure stemmed from decades of combat experience. The Wehrmacht had pioneered blitzkrieg, mastered combined arms warfare, and understood the tyranny of supply lines. Their own campaigns repeatedly stalled when logistics lagged behind tactical gains. In Russia, the Wehrmacht's advance faltered not from Soviet resistance initially, but from inability to supply forces across vast distances. German trucks broke down on Russian roads. Horse-drawn wagons, still 80% of German military transport, couldn't match Panzer spearheads. Railway gauge mismatches left supplies stranded hundreds of miles from the front. General der Panzertruppe Heinrich von Luttwitz, destined to command the 47th Panzer Corps from September 1944, had written in July, "The Americans faced the same logistical impossibility we encountered in Russia. Their mechanical advantage becomes a liability. Machines demand fuel, ammunition, parts. They've advanced 400 miles in 30 days. History teaches what follows: paralysis." German intelligence meticulously tracked American consumption. A Sherman tank burned 0.5 miles per gallon on roads, worse cross-country. An infantry division required 700 tons of supplies daily. An armored division needed 1,000 tons. Patton commanded 12 divisions across a 60-mile front. The mathematics were unforgiving: 12,000 tons daily, moved 400 miles over ruined roads through transportation networks systematically destroyed during the German retreat. General Major Siegfried Westphal, future Chief of Staff to Field Marshal von Rundstedt, calculated on August 20, even with unlimited trucks, which they lack, perfect roads, which they lack, and no mechanical failures, an impossibility, they still couldn't sustain Patton beyond 48 hours. Physical laws remain unbreakable, even by American industry. At 2 p.m. on August 25, 1944, in a requisitioned French chateau near Le Mans, Lieutenant Colonel Laurent A. Ayres of the Motor Transport Service confronted skeptical officers. The numbers were stark: Patton's Third Army was consuming supplies faster than any military in history, advancing at speeds defying all logistical planning. Traditional supply methods, rail transport, scheduled convoys, depot-to-unit distribution, had collapsed under the strain. "Gentlemen," Ayres declared, "we're creating a one-way highway from Cherbourg and the beaches to the front. Vehicles will operate 20 hours daily. No stops except fuel and emergencies. We'll move 12,500 tons minimum each day." The name derived from railway terminology. Red Ball freight denoted express shipment with absolute priority. The Red Ball Express would operate identically, total priority, 0 delays, no exceptions. The technical specifications defied German military doctrine. Dual parallel one-way highways, loaded trucks outward, empties returning. 24-hour operations with headlights blazing, ignoring blackout protocols. Non-stop policy except for fuel and mechanical failure. 5-minute convoy intervals maintaining 35 miles per hour average speed. Mobile maintenance units every 50 miles. MP checkpoints removing vehicles below 25 miles per hour. Colonel Charles O. Thrasher, commanding ADSEC's Advanced Section, reviewed the projections. We need 140 truck companies, 5,958 vehicles minimum, operating at 90% availability. This defies every logistics textbook ever written. Yet within 36 hours, the impossible became operational. On August 26, 1944, drivers of the 3,916th Quartermaster Truck Company boarded their GMC CCKW 2.5-ton trucks, deuce and a half, loaded with 105mm shells for Patton's guns at Mellon, 300 miles east. The Red Ball Express's demographic composition would have stunned German racial theorists. Of 23,000 drivers eventually operating the route, approximately 75% were African American soldiers in a still segregated army. These men, denied service in white restaurants and facilities across America, now sustained the most celebrated white general's advance. The drivers forged their own culture within hours. They painted slogans, Patton's Blood Bank, Hitler, Here We Come, Detroit to Berlin Express. They established traffic rules, slow vehicles pulled over immediately, breakdowns were pushed into ditches, trucks below 20 miles per hour became roadblocks. By August 28, German reconnaissance reported something unprecedented. The 116th Panzer Division radioed from positions overlooking the Red Ball route, continuous vehicle column, headlights visible 20 kilometers. No spacing, no blackout discipline. Estimate 1,000 vehicles hourly. Americans have abandoned all military precaution. This violated fundamental German doctrine. Night lights invited air attack, dense columns presented perfect artillery targets, inadequate spacing meant one disabled truck could halt entire convoys. Yet the Americans appeared unconcerned. General der Panzertruppe Edgar Feuchtinger, commanding the 21st Panzer Division, personally observed the Red Ball Express from concealed positions on August 30. His report to Army Group B headquarters revealed growing alarm: the enemy operates a supply system beyond our comprehension. Vehicles pass at 30-second intervals, day and night, non-stop. They don't conceal, don't disperse, don't follow any rules we recognize. This isn't military science, it's mass production applied to warfare. The Germans failed to grasp that American logistics functioned on entirely different principles. Where German doctrine emphasized concealment, Americans relied on volume. Where Germans conserved vehicles, Americans assumed 20% mechanical failure and planned accordingly. Where Germans followed strict procedures, Americans improvised constantly. The Red Ball Express's achievements defied German logistical calculations. First week, August 25 to 31, 1944. 89,939 tons of supplies delivered. Daily average, 12,848 tons. Round-trip distance, 686 miles. Vehicle rotations, 5,958 trucks making 1.5 trips daily. Operation fuel consumption, 300,000 gallons. German logistics specialists captured these figures from American documents and dismissed them as propaganda. Yet the numbers were real, and accelerating. By September 5, the Red Ball Express established rhythms unimaginable to German logistics officers still dependent on horse-drawn wagons for 80% of transport. Convoys departed every 5 minutes from western terminals. Average convoy, 67 vehicles. Load per vehicle, 5 tons standard, 7 tons frequently overloaded. 350-mile one-way transit, 14 hours average. Terminal turnaround, 2 hours. Vehicles constantly moving, 5,000 at any moment. The Red Ball Express generated hourly innovations as drivers and mechanics solved problems German military science considered insurmountable. When trucks failed, approximately 1,800 daily, mobile maintenance units performed roadside repairs. Mechanics implemented triage, 15 minutes to fix or push aside. Parts were cannibalized from unrepairable vehicles. Engines were swapped in 45 minutes using mobile cranes. When designated routes congested, drivers forged alternatives. They commandeered French buses for personnel transport, freeing trucks for cargo. They repainted captured German vehicles olive drab and pressed them into service. They built bypasses around destroyed bridges using rubble from bombed structures as roadbed. Germans witnessed this chaos yielding order and couldn't comprehend it. German logistics doctrine stressed careful planning, maintenance schedules, and proper procedures. Americans violated every principle, yet their system accelerated rather than collapsed. The most shocking revelation for German observers was American fuel management. The Red Ball Express consumed 300,000 gallons daily just for its own operations, surpassing the total allocations of many German armies. Yet fuel never ran short. The Americans had engineered a parallel marvel, Operation Pluto, pipeline under the ocean, laying fuel pipelines across the English Channel. By September 1944, fuel flowed through undetected underwater pipes. Forward fuel dumps materialized every 25 miles along the Red Ball route. Tanker trucks operated parallel convoy systems, ensuring no vehicle waited more than 10 minutes for refueling. General Major Walter Warlimont observed via aerial reconnaissance, the Americans maintain fuel dumps larger than our entire strategic reserves. They burn more gasoline transporting gasoline than we allocate to complete panzer divisions. This transcends warfare as we comprehend it, its industrial overflow. The Red Ball Express didn't merely supply Patton's advance, it multiplied his speed exponentially. German doctrine calculated armored divisions could sustain 20 to 30 miles daily under optimal conditions. Patton's divisions, supplied by the Red Ball Express, averaged 40 to 60 miles daily for weeks. On September 1, 1944, the 4th Armored Division advanced 35 miles by morning, paused for resupply at noon. Red Ball trucks stood ready with fuel and ammunition, enabling another 32-mile afternoon advance. This 67-mile single-day thrust shattered German defensive planning predicated on maximum 30-mile daily advances. General Oberst Heinz Guderian, reviewing reports in East Prussia, initially refused belief: no armored force can advance 60 miles daily for a week. Mechanical failures alone prevent it. This is propaganda or misidentification. But intercepted American radio traffic confirmed the reality. More disturbingly for German commanders, Americans broadcast positions openly without encryption, supremely confident in outmaneuvering German reactions. By September 5, 1944, German intelligence compiled comprehensive Red Ball Express reports. The implications proved catastrophic for Wehrmacht planning. Every assumption about American military capability required revision. The reports documented observations defying German military science. Americans wasted vehicles extravagantly, abandoning damaged trucks rather than repairing them. Drivers operated on stimulants for days, violating personnel management principles. Zero camouflage discipline rendered the system vulnerable to air attacks that never materialized. 30% daily mechanical failure rates were overwhelmed through redundancy. Fuel consumption levels would bankrupt any European military. General Feldmarschall Walter Model's response betrayed mounting desperation: if these reports prove accurate, we confront not a superior army but a superior civilization. They conceal nothing because they fear nothing. They waste resources because they possess limitless resources. We cannot defeat this through military tactics. The Red Ball Express drivers paid a physical price invisible to German observers. Drivers operated 72 consecutive hours, hallucinating from exhaustion and benzodrine. Accidents claimed 300 drivers during the operation. Trucks collided in fog, overturned on ruined roads, combusted from overheated engines. Yet morale remained exceptionally high. These men, mostly African Americans denied equal rights at home, understood they were making history. Each mile driven, each ton delivered refuted Hitler's racial theories. Captured German officers provided eloquent testimony to the Red Ball Express's impact. General der Panzertruppe Heinrich von Luttwitz, captured in September 1944, told interrogators, "We recognized defeat when we comprehended your supply system. You violate every regulation. Squander fuel, discard vehicles, exhaust drivers, yet succeed through sheer volume. You've industrialized warfare beyond our understanding." The psychological impact on German forces proved devastating. Wehrmacht soldiers heard American trucks all night, every night, ceaseless engines, endless supplies. They held 3 rounds per rifle while Americans delivered millions. The sound itself became psychological warfare. The vehicles astonished German engineers. The GMC CCKW 2.5-ton truck, the Red Ball Express backbone, embodied mass production perfection. General Motors manufactured over 500,000 by war's end, exceeding all German military trucks combined. These trucks featured innovations Germans hadn't implemented: all-wheel drive standard rather than exceptional, automatic tire inflation, waterproofing enabling 30-inch fording, engines tolerating low-quality fuel unmodified, functional winter heaters. More astounding was American maintenance philosophy. Where Germans rebuilt engines, Americans replaced them. Where Germans rationed parts, Americans discarded entire vehicles for minor issues. Where Germans employed master mechanics, Americans deployed thousands of competent technicians performing 80% of repairs. As the front advanced eastward, the Red Ball Express adapted with speed that stunned German planning officers accustomed to weeks of preparation for major logistical changes. When the original Chartres route proved inadequate, Americans created Red Ball Express extensions overnight. White Ball Express, Rouen to Paris. Green Diamond, Cherbourg to railroad transfer points. Red Lion, Bayeux to Brussels. ABC, Antwerp-Brussels-Charleroi. Each new route became operational within 48 hours of conception. German staff officers required weeks to plan comparable operations. Americans simply painted new markers, assigned trucks, and commenced rolling. The African-American driver predominance created cognitive dissonance for German racial theorists. Nazi ideology declared blacks inferior, incapable of technical tasks, lacking initiative. Yet these drivers performed logistical miracles unmatched by German forces. The African-American soldiers recognized the irony. Knowing Nazi perceptions fueled their determination. Each mile driven disproved Hitler. They combated racism with truck keys, defeating Nazi ideology through superior performance. Some German prisoners forced to load Red Ball trucks found their worldview shattered working alongside African-American sergeants who calculated weight distributions faster than German engineers, spoke better English than German instructors, and treated prisoners humanely despite Nazi propaganda about racial behavior. The Red Ball Express required infrastructure Germans deemed impossible under combat conditions. Engineers built or reinforced 40 bridges, created 15 major fuel depots, established 26 maintenance stations, and constructed 8 temporary driver cities, all while operations continued. The Mons Bridge, destroyed by German engineers specifically to halt American logistics, was calculated to require 6 weeks minimum replacement. American engineers built a temporary bridge in 14 hours, while Red Ball convoys detoured only 8 miles on hasty bulldozed bypass roads. German engineers observed American construction methods with astonishment: no planning meetings, no detailed blueprints, just immediate action. They built faster than Germans could destroy, creating infrastructure appearing overnight in French fields. One Red Ball Express achievement particularly stunned German artillery officers: ammunition supply rates exceeding their highest theoretical calculations. American artillery units fired without restriction, a luxury no German unit had enjoyed since 1942. During the September 1944 reduction of Metz's fortifications, XX Corps artillery fired 100,000 rounds in 24 hours. The Red Ball Express delivered every round plus 20% surplus. German artillery defending Metz was rationed to 50 rounds per gun daily. The disparity proved overwhelming. American guns fired continuously for hours while German artillery officers calculated such bombardments required 50 truckloads hourly. The Red Ball provided incessantly. The Red Ball Express consumed vehicles at rates that would have paralyzed any other military. By late September, mechanical attrition reached staggering proportions. Average vehicle life, 10,000 miles, normal, 30,000. Daily deadline rate, 30% of all vehicles. Engines replaced, 500 weekly. Tires consumed, 10,000 weekly. Total vehicles destroyed or abandoned, 5,000 plus. Yet operations never slowed. American production anticipated such losses. Ships arrived weekly at French ports carrying hundreds of new trucks. Replacement drivers received 2 days training before joining convoys. German calculations showed Americans destroying more trucks weekly than the Wehrmacht possessed in France. Yet transport capacity increased rather than diminished. They achieved the Germans' impossible, logistics outpacing consumption. French civilians along the Red Ball route witnessed American abundance contradicting years of German occupation scarcity. The psychological impact on occupied populations proved immediate and profound. Red Ball Express drivers, particularly African Americans, often shared rations with French civilians despite regulations. At every stop, children gathered receiving chocolate, cigarettes, soap. The contrast with German occupation was stark. Americans casually gave what Germans strictly rationed. German intelligence reported the propaganda impact. French civilians now consider American victory inevitable. They cite truck convoys as proof. Resistance activity has increased 400% along Red Ball routes. Populations that accepted our occupation now actively oppose it. In early September 1944, the Red Ball Express faced its greatest challenge. Patton's Third Army had advanced so far that even the Red Ball struggled maintaining supply rates. The round trip now exceeded 700 miles. Drivers collapsed, vehicles disintegrated. German intelligence detected the strain. General der Panzertruppe Otto von Manschufel reported September 8, American supply lines show collapse signs. Convoy intervals increased from 5 to 15 minutes. Vehicle speed decreased. This is our opportunity. But American adaptability again surprised the Germans. Within 72 hours, the Red Ball Express reorganized, created intermediate transfer points cutting individual runs to 350 miles, implemented driver rotation, established forward maintenance bases, doubled assigned vehicles. By September 12, tonnage delivery actually increased. The crisis that should have halted Patton only strengthened the system. Supplementing the Red Ball Express, Americans implemented another logistic solution Germans deemed impossible: large-scale aerial supply. C-47 transports began delivering critical supplies directly to forward units, each aircraft carrying 3 tons. On September 16, 1944, Wehrmacht observers counted 900 transport flights daily, delivering 2,700 tons by air. The Luftwaffe at its peak managed 300 tons daily to Stalingrad, considering that maximum effort. The Americans employed transport aircraft like trucks, no fighter escort concerns, no fuel limitations. They assumed losses and overwhelmed through numbers. The Wehrmacht couldn't compete with this industrial arithmetic. The Red Ball Express operated under command principles violating German military hierarchy. Junior officers made decisions reserved for Wehrmacht generals. Sergeants commanded operations exceeding German colonels' responsibilities. This decentralization baffled German observers. American logistics functioned without apparent central control. Every lieutenant acted like a general, every sergeant like a colonel. Chaos should have resulted. Instead, they achieved efficiency. The Wehrmacht's rigid hierarchy couldn't match this. By October 1944, advancing railheads began reducing Red Ball Express requirements. The operation intended for 10 days lasted 82 days, delivering 412,000 tons over 122 million ton-miles. German commanders, now fighting on their borders, reflected on their observations. General Feldmarschall Model wrote in his final report, "We were defeated primarily not by American tanks or planes, but by American trucks." The Red Ball Express proved that in modern warfare, logistics is strategy. The transition to rail transport itself constituted a marvel. American railroad engineers reconstructed 1,000 miles of destroyed French rail while the Red Ball operated. They laid new track faster than Germans could destroy it, often using captured German equipment. The final Red Ball Express statistics defied every German logistical calculation. 82 operational days. 412,193 tons delivered. 122 million ton-miles. 5,958 average vehicles, 7,000 peak. 23,000 total drivers. 700,000 gallons consumed daily. 40,000 tons ammunition for Patton alone. 15 million rations transported. 135,000 tons medical supplies. Reviewing these figures in captivity, German officers admitted calculating American logistics using European precedents. They tripled their best performance assuming American maximum. They erred tenfold. Beyond tonnage and distance, the Red Ball Express achieved something more profound. It shattered German faith in their own military superiority. Wehrmacht officers who dismissed Americans as soft and mechanically dependent watched those same Americans achieve logistical miracles through determination and industrial abundance. German POWs stood silently at prison camp fences, counting passing Red Ball trucks. Some wept. They understood the meaning, not merely that Americans could supply their armies, but that they could waste more than Germans could produce. They witnessed their worldview collapsing truck by truck. The Red Ball Express forced unexpected racial reckoning within the American military itself. The operation's success depended overwhelmingly on segregated African American soldiers denied equal treatment and combat roles. General Eisenhower, visiting Red Ball Operation September 1944, witnessed the contradiction firsthand. His aide Captain Harry Butcher recorded, "The general watched color drivers working 20 hours straight. He said, 'These men are winning the war as surely as any infantry. We must reconsider many things.'" The success generated integration pressures contributing to military desegregation 3 years later. African American soldiers had demonstrated in France what they always knew: given tools and opportunity, they matched anyone. The Red Ball was their combat, and they won decisively. German racial theorists struggled explaining the contradiction. SS racial science publications simply stopped mentioning American logistics operations. The evidence was too overwhelming to deny, too damaging to acknowledge. German military engineers studied Red Ball Express operations intensively post-war. The lessons revolutionized global logistics thinking. Volume overcomes inefficiency. Mechanical redundancy eliminates vulnerability. Decentralized execution enables speed. Standardization multiplies capability. Human endurance limits are higher than assumed. General Franz Halder, former German General Staff Chief, wrote in 1950, "The Red Ball Express proved logistics determined strategy, not vice versa." Americans understood this. We learned too late. Among 23,000 Red Ball drivers, individual heroism stories emerged that Germans found incomprehensible within their military framework, verified accounts from military records. Corporal John L. Houston drove continuously 48 hours delivering ammunition to the 2nd Armored Division at Cambrai, falling asleep at the wheel 3 times but continuing after fellow drivers revived him. Private Booker T. Washington's truck caught fire from overheated brakes while carrying medical supplies. Instead of abandoning it per procedure, he drove the burning vehicle 2 miles to a field hospital, jumping as flames reached the cab. The supplies saved wounded soldiers from both armies. These stories, multiplied thousands of times, revealed American military culture to observing Germans, individual initiative, calculated risk-taking, and mission accomplishment over regulatory compliance. Desperately, German forces attempted creating their own Red Ball Express version late 1944. Operation Grief during the Battle of the Bulge included plans using captured American trucks for German supply lines. The effort failed immediately. German drivers couldn't maintain American speeds. German mechanics couldn't repair American equipment rapidly enough. German fuel supplies couldn't sustain the consumption rates. Most fundamentally, Germans couldn't replicate the American attitude of unlimited resources. General der Panzertruppe Otto von Manschufel reported, "We captured 50 American trucks. Within a week, 30 were deadlined. Americans would have replaced them. We attempted repairs. That difference explains our defeat." The 1944-45 winter provided the Red Ball Express's ultimate test. Freezing rain, snow, and ice should have halted wheeled transport. German doctrine stated wheeled logistics became impossible below -10 degrees Celsius. Yet the Red Ball Express continued. Drivers wrapped tire chains, poured radiator alcohol, and kept rolling. Speeds dropped from 35 to 15 miles per hour, but tonnage delivery persisted. German observers reported ice-covered convoys moving through blizzards that stopped panzer divisions. The Americans had created a logistics system functioning regardless of weather, terrain, or enemy action. It wasn't elegant or efficient by German standards, but it was unstoppable. In May 1945, captured German logistics officers were required to study Red Ball Express operations for historical records. Their conclusions were unanimous and devastating to German military pride. General der Infanterie Friedrich Schultz summarized, "The Red Ball Express represents warfare we never imagined. Americans created temporary civilization, thousands of men, thousands of vehicles, millions of tons of supplies existing solely to feed armies, then dissolving when unneeded. We built permanent infrastructure over years. They created superior temporary systems in days." The most insightful analysis came from General Oberst Heinz Guderian, father of German armored warfare. "We invented blitzkrieg but never solved its fundamental limitation, logistics. Americans solved it through industrial excess we deemed impossible." The Red Ball Express wasn't a supply line, but a flowing river of material that drowned our forces. The Red Ball Express cost the United States approximately $100 million in 1944, vehicles destroyed, fuel consumed, roads ruined, French damage claims. German staff officers accustomed to managing scarcity found the figure incomprehensible. Yet Americans considered it cheap. The operation enabled capturing 400,000 German soldiers, liberating France, Belgium, and Luxembourg, and shortened the war an estimated 6 months. Each war day cost America $250 million. The Red Ball Express paid for itself in one day of shortened conflict. Lieutenant General John C. H. Lee, commanding European theater logistics, stated, "We wore out 5,000 trucks and 23,000 men to destroy the German army in France. In any previous war, these would be catastrophic losses. In American industrial war, it's acceptable overhead." An unexpected Red Ball Express consequence was revolutionary impact on post-war civilian logistics. Thousands of drivers returned to America with experience operating the world's largest transportation network. These veterans founded trucking companies, designed interstate highways, and created the modern American logistics industry. Companies like Yellow Freight, Roadway, and Consolidated Freightways were started by Red Ball veterans applying military logistics to civilian commerce. They had learned in France that volume beats efficiency, speed beats perfection, and keeping trucks rolling 24 hours moves the world. Military historians universally recognize the Red Ball Express as the European theater's decisive logistics operation. Without it, Patton's advance stops, Paris falls weeks later, and German forces successfully establish winter defensive lines. The operation validated American military doctrine emphasizing logistics over tactics. While German officers studied Clausewitz and battlefield maneuver, Americans studied Detroit assembly lines and railroad timetables. The Red Ball Express demonstrated that in modern warfare, supplying forces determines victory more than tactical brilliance. On September 15, 1944, General Feldmarschall Gerd von Rundstedt, Supreme German Commander West, received comprehensive Red Ball Express intelligence. After hours studying reports, he summoned his staff. "Gentlemen," he announced, "we confront something beyond military solution. The Americans have created a supply system making distance irrelevant. Our strategy assumed their culminating point where advancing forces outrun supplies. That point doesn't exist. They have revolutionized warfare, and we're fighting the last war." His operations officer, Oberst Hans von Gersdorf, suggested interdicting Red Ball routes with remaining Luftwaffe. Von Rundstedt's response revealed complete understanding. "With what shall we interdict? They have 6,000 trucks. Destroying 1,000, which we cannot, would see them replaced weekly. We'd need to destroy 200 trucks daily just matching their production. We don't have 200 aircraft total." Behind statistics lay human stories revealing American character to German observers. Drivers refusing relief after 3 sleepless days fearing their trucks might not continue. Mechanics working freezing rain maintaining convoys. Teenagers lying about age to drive trucks. Such stories, multiplied throughout the operation, created mythology demoralizing German forces. The Americans weren't soft as propaganda claimed. They drove themselves harder than Germans drove horses, but voluntarily, not from fear. This made them more dangerous than German doctrine understood. The Red Ball Express became unintentional propaganda more powerful than any planned operation. German soldiers heard convoys all night, endless motors, endless supplies. The sound itself became psychological warfare. German units reported ghost convoys demoralizing troops as effectively as actual logistics. Knowing Americans had unlimited supplies while Germans rationed final ammunition created despair undermining combat effectiveness. American psychological warfare units recognized the impact. They broadcast truck engine sounds toward German lines when actual convoys were absent. German units reported these phantom convoys as real, demonstrating the psychological damage inflicted. In November 1944, with rail lines partially restored, the Red Ball Express officially discontinued. But its methods had permanently revolutionized military logistics. The concept of continuous, high-volume, wasteful but effective supply became American military doctrine. The final innovation was dissolution speed. The massive operation, 23,000 men, 6,000 vehicles, hundreds of installations, vanished in 72 hours. Troops reassigned, vehicles redistributed, routes returned to civilian use. Germans required months creating smaller operations and years dissolving them. Americans built what they needed, used it, discarded it, and built better. When German generals surrendered May 1945, many specifically cited the Red Ball Express demonstrating continued resistance as hopelessness. General der Panzertruppe Otto von Manschufel stated during interrogation, "When we understood your logistics capacity, we knew the war was lost. You could supply armies faster than we could destroy them." The Red Ball Express was a weapon against which we had no defense. General Feldmarschall Albert Kesselring, among Germany's most competent commanders, when asked what most surprised him about American forces, answered, "Not your tanks, not your planes, but your trucks." The Red Ball Express showed that you had militarized your entire society's production capacity. We were fighting your factories, not just your soldiers. The final Red Ball Express statistics stand as American industrial warfare testament. Total cargo, 412,193 tons. Distance covered, 122 million ton-miles. Trucks, 5,958 average, 7,000 peak. Drivers, 23,000 total. Operating days, 82. Fuel consumed, 57 million gallons. Tires worn, 180,000. Vehicles destroyed, 5,000 plus. Cost, $100 million. German divisions defeated through supply advantage, 47. Estimated war days shortened, 180. These numbers tell a story transcending military operations. They represent warfare's permanent transformation, when industrial capacity surpassed tactical brilliance, when logistics determined rather than served strategy. In 1994, on D-Day's 50th anniversary, the United States Postal Service issued a commemorative stamp honoring the Red Ball Express at Washington's National Postal Museum. The ceremony recognized the operation overshadowed by combat but equally decisive for Allied victory. Attending veterans expressed pride in an operation proving American industrial might and individual determination could overcome any obstacle. They had driven through exhaustion, through mechanical failure, through weather that stopped armor. They were mostly black soldiers, segregated, discriminated against, denied wartime recognition, but they delivered victory at 35 miles per hour. The Red Ball Express proved that in modern warfare, logistics isn't support, it's the main effort. The operation demonstrated that industrial democracy could mobilize resources on scales totalitarian efficiency couldn't match. German generals who laughed at American logistics were silenced by 6,000 trucks delivering 12,500 tons daily across 700 miles of liberated France. They had assumed Americans would follow European precedent, conserve resources, advance cautiously. Instead, Americans created a logistic tsunami drowning German forces in Allied abundance. The operation's success came not from military genius, but from American characteristics Germans never understood: industrial excess, mechanical aptitude, improvisational skill, and most importantly, individual soldiers' initiative making independent decisions requiring field marshal approval and the Wehrmacht. In his memoirs, General George S. Patton, whose Third Army primarily benefited from the Red Ball Express, wrote the ultimate tribute. The Red Ball Express truck drivers deserved equal credit for defeating Germany as any combat unit. They drove through exhaustion, through mechanical failure, through weather that stopped armor. Without them, the Third Army doesn't move. Without movement, we don't win. They were mostly black soldiers, segregated, discriminated against, denied recognition. But they won the war as surely as any rifleman. History must record this truth. That truth stands as the Red Ball Express's final testament: 23,000 mostly African-American drivers operating 6,000 trucks on a one-way victory highway achieved what German military science declared impossible. They supplied advancing armies faster than physics should allow, maintained tempo beyond human endurance, and proved that in modern warfare, the side with more trucks beats the side with better tactics. The German generals who laughed at American logistics, dismissing it as wasteful, undisciplined, unsustainable, surrendered 82 days later to armies supplied by the Red Ball Express, finally understanding that American trucks had defeated German tanks, that industrial abundance had overwhelmed military excellence, that logistics had become strategy. The Red Ball Express ended November 16, 1944, but its impact echoes through military history. It proved that in the industrial age, victory belongs not to the bravest soldiers or brightest generals, but to the nation delivering the most supplies, the fastest, the farthest. The German generals who laughed at American logistics in August 1944 signed surrender documents in May 1945, defeated by 23,000 truck drivers who revolutionized warfare at 35 miles per hour. Their story deserves its place among history's great military operations. Not because it was elegant or efficient, it was neither, but because it worked. The Red Ball Express kept Patton rolling, kept Germans retreating, and proved that in modern war, truck convoys matter more than tank columns. France's highways still bear Red Ball Express scars: ruts from overloaded trucks, hastily repaired bridges, roadside abandoned vehicles. But the operation's greatest monument is Allied victory's speed. Every shortened war day saved thousands of lives. The Red Ball Express shortened it by months. Ultimately, the German generals who laughed at American logistics learned modern warfare's hardest lesson: amateurs discuss tactics, professionals discuss logistics, and Americans discuss trucks. The Red Ball Express was America speaking very loudly indeed, through 6,000 never-silent engines carrying democracy and destruction at 35 miles per hour down a one-way road to victory. The final word belongs to a German officer, name lost to history, quoted by a Red Ball driver at the 1994 commemoration. Standing beside a Belgian road, watching the endless American truck convoy, the officer told his captors in accented English, "We prepared for everything. Your tanks, your planes, your ships. We never prepared for your trucks. How do you defeat an enemy possessing more trucks than you have soldiers?" The answer rolled past him at 5-minute intervals, driven by exhausted Americans rewriting warfare's rules, one delivery at a time. The Red Ball Express had transformed logistics into strategy, supply into victory, and trucks into the European war's most decisive weapon. The German generals stopped laughing when they understood this truth, but by then Patton already stood at their gates, supplied by military history's greatest logistics operation.